So Tom, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
For those who can't be here tonight, could you please just briefly reintroduce yourself? I think some
Sure.
people have seen your previous presentation, but
Okay.
just tell us a little bit about who you are and what Fraser Forbes does, and then we'll get into the topic for this evening.
Sure, that's fine. My name is Tom Burke. I'm a vice president with Fraser Forbes. We are a brokerage and consulting firm. So in this particular instance, we would not be acting as a principal or as a buyer. We would represent just the condominium association in doing our very best to find you the appropriate buyer and negotiate the best possible price, etc. So that's our general approach. Fraser Forbes has been in business since 1995. They've done $5 billion worth of transactions. Right now, they're doing an Association Drive, the center, CEA, Center for Educational Associations, or Conference of Educational Associations on Wheelie Metro, across on the south side. So they brought together 10 different associations, managed that process for them, took it out to market, and they'll be getting, instead of these decrepit office buildings they have now, they'll be getting 75 million, something like that, for the property. So that's right here in Reston. So we're very familiar with the area and with, prices and what the market's doing right now. I was with a home builder for 22 years, Winchester Homes. They're active in Northern Virginia and Montgomery County, and as well as other counties further out, Howard, Anne Arundel, a little bit in Prince George's, Loudoun, certainly, out in Brambleton. And I used to buy land for them, and then went with Fraser Forbes as I got older and was looking to cut back a little bit, get out of the corporate routine. My background before that, I was studied as an architect, and then went with the Rouse Company. Do you know them?
Yep.
We did festival marketplaces back in the 80s. Columbia. So I was based in Columbia, working out of there, and then did office projects for Oliver Carr in Washington D.C. We did the Willard, we did Metro Center, so we've been experiencing a lot of projects. So Fraser Forbes is a wonderful group of people. They'd be great to work with. As I said, they would represent you to try to define what the community wants to do with the property, and then market it very broadly. I had given Parker a quick email, which can serve as a proposal if you want copies of it.
And I distributed it to the board.
Yep, I have it.
Does anybody need a copy?
Yeah, I'd like to see one.
Sure.
So you did not prepare an RFP for this evening?
No, this is our proposal. Just, a brief one.
Also,
Sure.
do you have more, or should I check?
Yeah, sure.
You want to share with me?
No,
I just want to make sure I've read it.
As a general description.
I guess we got one more.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
Wait, excuse me, I'm confused. There was a meeting last time when it was requested that there be a little bit more structure to these discussions. I want to confirm this. You did not prepare a written RFP in response to specific questions. Is that correct?
We haven't answered all of your questions. We've put together the general outline. Yes.
Were you instructed to prepare an RFP?
We have Parker's email, which I'm sure he ran by all of you.
I'm not on the board, so none of the members really know what's going on. You did not instruct these guys to prepare an RFP?
I don't know what you mean by request for proposal.
Yeah.
I would prepare a request for proposal to you.
The board? In response to specific questions that we can compare to other bidders?
So we took the list of questions, Chris, that you provided as guidance. We turned it into a document. We distributed the document to the two potential owners' reps.
Was that document approved by the board?
It was.
It was approved by the board in a board vote.
Marcia, it was approved electronically.
It was approved by the board in a board vote electronically, is that correct? Because I don't see anything in the meeting minutes about it.
I would have to look. We
No, it
just,
wasn't approved by a board vote.
Okay?
we discussed this in.
You did not approve it.
It was in a special, Chris, you are out of line here.
I'm trying to figure out what's going on for a $3 million project.
Why don't you listen, and at the end of this.
I
why
am
don't you
trying
ask
to figure
questions?
out what's going on for a $3 million project. You were specifically instructed, and I thought we had total agreement that an RFP was going to be prepared.
Let's listen to what the gentleman has to say, and then if you have questions after that,
I want to know why an RFP was not prepared in accordance with the agreement that I thought we had at the last meeting.
So my understanding was that we were going to take the issues that you raised, we were going to turn them into a document that the board would approve, and we were going to distribute them to the owner's reps, so the owner's reps would come in and give us presentations of how they would go about answering the questions.
Yeah, that's not my understanding at all. I was at that meeting.
Okay, so if we haven't met your expectations, I'm sorry, but we have Tom here to discuss what Fraser Forbes' approach is to the project. And if this is not sufficient to go forward, then we can ask them to do something more formal.
Okay,
But tonight, he's here, ready to present the information based on the questions that you generated, the document that Rob Schuman and I put together, that the board approved, and that we distributed to the two
so for the
owners.
record, I want to state the board never approved this.
Okay, take that up with the board. I'm a volunteer helping him out.
Yeah, I'm taking it up with you and the board.
Okay. So Chris, I just want to help, I want to help delineate who has what responsibility. Please remember that I'm a
I
volunteer,
remember you're a volunteer.
and I'm trying to
Yeah,
assist the
and
board,
these guys are volunteers as well.
and I'm trying to
And this
assist
is
the
a $3
board.
million project.
I got it, I'm trying to assist the
this
board.
is extremely
One second,
out
Susan,
of
please.
order.
So 1 second, I'm trying to assist the board. I do the things that the ownership and the board asked me to do, which was to come up with a document, which I did. I distributed it to the board. Unfortunately, that's where my responsibility ends
Yeah, I don't
until
agree
I
with that.
receive direction from the board. And
Yeah, I
the
don't
board
agree
gave
with
me
that.
direction
Let's move
to...
on, Parker, because I just don't agree with that at all. Okay?
Okay, very good. So Tom,
Well, I apologize,
responded
but we're responding in general to what we thought your needs were, based upon our meetings with you and the email you sent us describing it. I think if you're talking about an RFP as a formal bidding process and stuff, I think personally, or our recommendation would be you're getting the cart a little bit before the horse.
Thank you.
I think that, you know, we're not bidding the B-1 bomber here. It's very important to you, but I think it's the most important thing is to decide what direction the community wants to go and then figure out a way to get there, you know, as smoothly and as rewarding a way as possible for the community. So our feeling was, as to how you would go about this is outlined in this, you know, simple one-page description. And I think, frankly, at this stage of the process, if it takes you more than a page to describe it, you're probably overthinking it. You're making it too complicated. Okay. So in general, as I said, we believe you need to establish a rough idea of the potential project and the community's reaction to it. So we reviewed carefully the Walsh-Colucci report. They talked about mid-rises, etc. Our advice would be, based upon our experience, an acre to an acre and a half is not enough for a mid-rise building. These things are 20 or 30 units to the acre. You know, a 30-unit building is not going to excite, you know, a lot of developers. So our feeling is that you're probably looking at a townhouse type redevelopment. What we would suggest you do, and you know, if we can help by just explaining this to you and it doesn't go any further, you know, that's fine too, is retain an engineer to at least do a preliminary layout of how you would use that acre, acre and a half. It's small, and
it's also flexible,
it's
the
small.
amount of land that we are willing
Yeah.
to use depending on the concept.
Right, I would imagine there'd be some to and fro. I mean, conceivably, there was a parking lot
Correct.
on kind of the north side that doesn't look looks underutilized, you may be able to pick up some of that. An engine, you have to actually start to draw it and put it down on, on paper and try to evaluate it. And we'd suggest that you should retain an engineer to do that, and to at least do a couple of renderings or something to give people an idea of the scale of the project. I mean, I'm not sure what all the issues in the community are regarding this, but I would imagine that the people living in that first building right next to the pool are going to be impacted a lot differently than the people in the, that are on the other side of Vantage Hill. So we're saying you need something to be able to market. You need to be able to tell people what you want to do. And we think that you working with an engineer, we can work through us, helping to manage that process and helping to present it, is the way to get started. I don't think you want to hitch yourself to a particular developer at this point, because they just don't know what it is. I don't know how they even responsibly evaluate at this point. So we're saying, you got to know what you're selling. So get a layout, get somebody out there with a survey, figure out, where you might go with it and what the impacts might be. You could stake it out or something like that, just to show people. I think you need to understand, or I guess you probably do, what is the process for the board making a decision? Is it a majority vote of the board? Is it 100% of the community? Is it,
A majority of owners.
66 2/3.
Okay. And I assume you would identify for the engineer, if you're reducing the parking lot, let's say, to build this, does that require whose approval does that require, et cetera? And I'm not saying you should answer me today, I'm just saying,
Yeah, so
I see that as an issue.
the idea was that if there was a creative developer who could do something about using the parking lot, but replace the parking.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the parameters established by the board, as you may remember in the first documents that we preliminarily sent you, the ones before the first presentation you did for us, was no loss of parking. So
Yeah.
we could expand the footprint conceivably of the project into the parking area, but they would then have to replace that parking for the community with something as part of that land development.
Yes, maybe there's a way to rejigger it, or, I looked at it too. I was just laying out some quick stuff. I knocked out some parking spaces at the end.
Right, so this is the pool?
The pool's
Yeah,
right
so that's
there.
the pool. So the idea is that if you took all of
I'm
this,
sorry, that's a pool, right?
okay,
That's a kiddie pool.
but this is Wainwright, yeah, so this is the parking area over here. So the idea is if you took the parking area, you could build something in that parking area, but you'd have to replace all that parking for the community at the same time. So would you do something with that as a garage with
Yeah.
units above it? The idea was that it would expand the size of the footprint of what could be developed, as long as you eventually replace the parking,
Yes, something could be on like a podium or something with parking underneath it.
So one of the parameters, remember, is that development rights-wise, we can do 139 units
Yeah.
on the entire parcel, on the entire huge footprint of Vantage Hill, is what we could develop. What we have to have something for is the pool site, because the pool is broken and expensive to fix and so on and so forth. So that's the natural place to start. It also makes sense that if there were going to be more units and therefore a bigger payout for Vantage Hill, and some of the vacant land that's currently parking became part of a complex, there would be additional land for a developer, which would mean additional units, which would mean additional money for Vantage Hill to get us up to, to get us closer to what theoretically is possible at 139 units. Clearly, we're not going to put 139 units on there.
No, not an acre.
But you're talking about 20 to 25 just on the pool site. And so
Yes.
if we offered up the parking lot, do you get to 50? Do you get to 75?
Well,
That's a big economic payoff for Vantage Hill. See what I mean?
Yeah, well, if you swept all the way around this parking lot, I mean, you still need parking for these units. I mean, I know you're saying replace some of it, but it would be, yeah, I mean, anything is possible. I think that if you're dealing with like 15 acres, it would be a different kind of calculation than if it's an acre and a half. It's
Right.
pretty tight. I mean, I'm trying to be honest with you and just, you know, if it works with us, fine. If not, we've helped you, so, you know. So, yes, I think, but somebody needs to an engineer needs to sit down and lay something out for you to see it, and then stake it out in the field, and maybe do balloons or something to show the scale of it. If you do a podium and even a 2-story, 3-story townhouse above that, or garden apartment, it will loom over these existing 2-story townhouses. So there'll be definitely an impact on them. Now, Reston's becoming a more urbanized area, so maybe they would be fine with that, I don't know. But you gotta show it to them and get everybody rowing in the same direction.
So your thought is work with an engineer,
Uh-huh.
get a concept sketched out, get some hard facts about what an engineer thinks can go there,
Right,
and then take the concepts to the community for the vote.
yeah, make sure you know, yeah, get an idea of what you wanna do and what's, you know, what can be actually fit on the site, it's just a tight little site. And then, yeah, take it to the community.
And if you, so your proposal to manage that process for us includes what? I mean, give us a rundown of what.
We
you-
think that's like a
what you would-
4-month process, you know, a couple meetings a month, and meetings with the engineers, meetings with that would be a couple meetings a month with the engineer, and then a couple of meetings with the community. Every month, probably, there'll probably be 1 or 2 at the very end. And generally coordinating with the engineer, working with the board on potential layouts, that sort of thing. We think it's probably like a 3 or 4 month process. Now, if it goes longer than that because there's controversy, well, it's something, you know, we can address that. Again, try to minimize your outlay. I mean, you know, I know it's a lot for a community association to come up with, but it's, in the grand scheme of things, in development projects, you know, it is we think it's a pretty reasonable amount. I think you're better off if you can identify something rather than saying, okay, Joe Blow, you know, construction has this proposal, and you don't know what it is. I mean, nobody's gonna spend money without some sort of an agreement with you. And I don't think you wanna enter into an agreement if you don't know what it is you're agreeing to. So,
Well, let's just for the sake of the community hearing about it, let's talk about that for a second, because one of the concepts that we had was we would invite in some developers and we'd get some thoughts and some ideas from them. Now, the board chose not to take that as the first step. The board chose that they needed an owner's rep first. But we were thinking that in a competitive process with a desirable piece of land that someone would want to develop, because there's a pretty healthy profit for someone to make out of this, we would probably have some interests. We'd probably have some interest from the developer community to, on the come in and give us some ideas and concepts about what it is that they would do.
oh, you can test that out.
I think you're right in that we need to find out how much land we want to use
Yeah.
before we call in a developer,
I'm telling you, that's gonna be their first question, but
because
You
we
know,
don't
you
really
can-
know it.
give it a shot. I mean, I was a developer, and, you know, the first question out of the developer's mouth is, what's the site, and, you know, what's the height, you know, that you would live with? I'm sorry, do you want to say something?
My comment at all with that land with the pool, it would make a lot of sense to market for a skyscraper, something very similar to
No,
Lake Ann.
they're not allowed to let us, or they
Well, I
won't
mean,
let
I
us.
think
No,
maybe
we
we could,
can't, we have the zoning.
So zoning does not allow that. Zoning doesn't allow it.
So are
That's an
engineers that we would need a dime a dozen, or do you have any recommendations?
Oh, we can get it some too, yeah, we've worked with a bunch that are familiar with, you know, the county codes and the rest of the town center plan and all. So, yeah, we can, yeah,
Okay,
if you want to work with us, we can certainly then, work with us, then we'll, you know, invite in some engineers to talk to you, show you what they've done. Again, I just think that your steps are, figure out what you want, figure out what the community wants, figure out what can be fit on the site, figure out what the community wants, and then you'll have something tangible to market.
And, okay, so, and then we market it, and
Then
then we
we
get
can
a
market it.
developer whose concept we really like, we wanna put that
Right.
on the land,
Right. We
and
would-
then you guys, you're
would
done?
market it. No, we would market it for you. So then Fraser Forbes, we do brokerage and we work with owners. So if we had an agreement with you to represent you, we would take what the engineer did and we would combine it and we would produce a book like this, which is, and I'll leave this with you. There's another one which printed on 2 sides, so it's not as impressive, but anyway, sure. So what we do is, when we have been signed up to market a property, you can see, this gives you a good example of what you need to be able to tell somebody to get the best possible result. A summary, we describe the project. In this case, it was pretty specific because an owner had been working on it some. And then we would have sort of the terms, which would be, when do you expect your cash? Probably, a normal thing is when they finally get their approvals and they're ready to go, is the best possible price for you.
Her question's actually very critical, okay? And I think it's very important to be clear about this. What input would you expect the board to have after the developers take over the project? Because Susan has repeatedly expressed in multiple meetings a desire to make sure that whatever's built there is in conformity with roughly what we have now. And she has some pretty specific things that I know she's going to want to accomplish over the life of the project. So the concern that, I'm speaking for Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the concern she would have is that the developers take over and the Vantage Hill gets no input into essentially what's built there.
Okay, well, whatever, I think if you lay that out under the terms, first of all, lots of projects like this with the offering packages have development criteria. What color do you want the materials to be? What's the maximum height? That sort of thing.
And the design element, so that it blends with our community?
Yeah, if that's what you want. I mean, yes, I would think it is, but yeah, you can easily have, criteria written down under terms. And we would help you try to write those. They're architectural criteria. Like I worked on Columbia for the Rouse Company. We used to have a criteria that all the builders had to follow on the houses that they built. And it was, it was enforceable.
Okay.
And yes, nobody's gonna wanna spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars on engineering and have the community veto it. But if there's a set, pre-agreed criteria, and again, the engineer and we can help do that in that early 4 months, to prepare this. And then this is part of what we do as a brokerage company. It doesn't cost you anything. That's just part of our service because we want to sell it. Then we circulate this and we would review it with you as to who you want to circulate it to. But, we have lists of hundreds of, every developer in this area. And we could narrow that list down or, expand it, we're open to that. But again, that's part of the brokerage function, not part of that consulting, no cost to that. This is just part of the brokerage fee that we get when we finally sell the property. And if we don't sell it, we don't get anything.
So you're talking about, just to be clear, you're talking about 2 separate stages. One stage
Yep.
is to act as a consultant to the board and the association to help frame up, work with an engineer, get some concepts, and then when that part is finished, then you would want a brokerage
Right.
agreement, and in the brokerage agreement, you would detail out all the architectural requirements and all these other things. So we wouldn't
Well,
be.
we would, I think as you did that first 4-month thing with the engineer and the community, you would start laying out those criterias. Under the brokerage agreement, we would prepare the package and just enumerate them.
Okay.
But, you know, I would think that we would get, you know, some agreement with the community early on as to what's important to you, what you want to see, you know, you know, the colors and, you know, the height, and et cetera. And if parking has to be replaced, then that's part of the deal. Okay,
Yeah, we can't lose any parking spaces. We can move them around, but we can't lose them.
okay, well, it's good to know. I didn't know that, but when I was there, that was empty, but people were off at work, I assume, so. Right.
Now, one of the things we talked about early on as a parameter was that, that whatever gets built there, if it's condominiums or whatever, becomes part of the Vantage Hill Association. It sounds like what your approach is that it's not gonna be that. We're actually gonna,
Oh, I don't
we're
know.
actually gonna sell the land, and,
You'd have to work that out and decide what you want during that initial period. I think it could go either way. I mean, I would think it would be part of it. Unless you think there wouldn't be so many units.
so
They
you
would dominate.
you envision that it would be part of the Vantage Hill Association?
Yeah,
And that the new owners would be paying into,
I would think so.
okay.
And
And I'm just a little, if you could just talk us all through that just for a minute, because you're talking about the sale of an acre and a half or whatever it is. If it's a sale,
But
how
it's-
is that then still part of Vantage Hill? I mean, just walk us through how you see that.
I would see that, well, the HOA's been established by covenants placed upon the property, and you would place covenants on the property when you sold it.
So the Vantage Hill Association covenants would carry
I would think
into the
so.
sale
And I would think-
over the parcel.
Yeah, but you would want to modify them, and you would want to adjust, and, you know, the new owners coming in are not necessarily good. You would need to establish, you know, a payment into the Vantage Hill Condo Association, but they're not, you know, which is fair. You just have to work it out. They're not gonna want to necessarily replace a roof on a building that they're not part of, but they should still pay for upkeep and maintenance, et cetera. But you can allocate within the condo association. Different units can have different allocations.
I think, if I understand this right too, Juan Cardenas had actually indicated that when we structure this, we would have to make sure that it's structured with our bylaws in mind. Structure the new property with our bylaws in mind so that they are covered by the bylaws.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to decide how much of that needs to be fleshed out before you offer it. You need to start getting there. I'm not sure it has to be in, you know, absolute detail. But,
But if we sell the land, do we forfeit some of our rights to input on what goes there
That's
and
a
how
great
it looks?
question. That's a great question.
Thank you. It
Well-
would concern me.
when I was at the Rouse Company in Columbia, we would sell land fee simple to a developer. It would be controlled by covenants on the architecture. We specified materials, setbacks, you know, those are the most important things. Parking, those are, you know, issues like that. So, no, you don't forfeit control. You have to spell it out up front to be fair. You can't change the game on people after they're into it. But, yeah, that's what needs to be fleshed out in at least that initial 4 months.
See, so, okay, you can't change the game, and so I'm just not sure if I know what all the moves are gonna be for the whole game to be able to anticipate, to make sure that it's in the specs correctly ahead of time. And I don't know if that's where you all come in.
Yeah, we can help. Yeah, we've certainly done it a lot of times, and, you know, we would identify the issues. You know.
How does the Reston Association fit into that?
How does the what?
The Reston Association fit into that?
Reston Association, was
Yeah,
that the
The
larger,
Reston Homeowner Association.
So
Control Board of Reston.
the whole board?
So Reston has a tacit approval process, but it's Fairfax County Commission that actually approves the project. So Reston can say, we don't like it, but they can't veto it. They don't have an actual approval in the process. But of course, Fairfax won't act if they say, well, we don't like this.
Right. yeah.
So That's the piece. The powerful group that determines whether or not the project will be permitted is the Fairfax County Commission.
And if they deny, do they give you a chance to revise?
Oh,
So,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, so I think that what Tom is proposing is we actually would have a lot of this all finished in terms of the concept, in terms of the numbers of units, in terms of what it would look like, and all of that. We would take that to the community for a vote before they take it to Fairfax for permitting. So what Tom is saying is he doesn't think that a developer would be interested in spending any serious money on this until they knew the community was in favor of going forward. Now that's a little different than the process that we've talked about before, which is we actually get further into it before we take it to the community for a vote. So he's bringing the vote up closer and sooner into the process, but doing it basically with the same materials that we would have done if we'd done it later in the process, which is, and we heard this at the annual meeting, it's, I need to know, I need to have something I can look at.
Right.
I need something, I can see what it is. You know, people want to see something, this is what we're talking about doing, this is how many units it is, here's some schematics and some graphics about what it's going to look like, the impact it's going to have, and so on and so forth. So what he's saying is he would help us to get there by doing an engineer and getting some schematics together and some graphics together that would show that to the community and take it to a vote. If the community says yes, go ahead, then they'd start engaging the sale of the land in the developer
Right, then you're
process.
way down the road, and people have more certainty, which, the more certainty you can get, the more money you will get.
Do you need the approval only of Vantage Hill, or do you need the approval of the surrounding areas too?
Well, Fairfax County Commissioners would speak for the surrounding area, I would imagine.
So when Fairfax goes to,
Next door,
Yeah,
is that what you're talking about?
yep.
yeah, so when Fairfax goes for,
That's
When
part of the DRB process.
Yeah.
when the permitting process is going on, there will be open hearings, all the
Yeah,
abutters
they'll
will,
come, yeah.
they'll come and they'll have their say into the process.
Time for
Wait,
the
I just want to
input.
clarify, Brian, the DRB has the approval and the surrounding clusters have the input into that?
Well, they're affected parties, so they get to come to the meeting, and
And they
then you go to DRB and talk about the design,
Okay,
which I think you should go to DRB before you even do this.
so, but is the DRB the one that says yes or no, or is it the affected communities that say yes or no, or they just get input?
Depends on how loud they yell.
Got it,
How much
okay.
Yeah, heads up
complaining they
yeah.
do. But
Okay, I got it.
the DRB is the one that's gonna protect and make sure that it fits in the neighborhood.
That's a good point.
They're gonna put restrictions on it, and you can go to DRB and not go for a decision, but just do a consultation,
Yeah,
which might be a good idea to do up front and just say, look, we're thinking about this. What do you
What's
think?
your input?
So just as a point of information, Mike Romeo, who's at Walsh Colucci, was on the Reston DRB. And so Mike has been paid by Vantage Hill Association. Walsh Colucci were the ones who came up with the report. So Vantage Hill has bought itself a way into that process.
Yeah.
And I think it would be just natural that when we come up with something, we could easily run it by Mike and say, what do you think? Give us a warm and fuzzy, what do you think the DRB will do with this? And yes, it'll be part of the process.
yeah.
Is he on the DRB?
He was the chair of Reston Planning and Zoning.
Oh, okay. That's not DRB though.